Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today's Monday, June 24th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Today marks 2 years since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. The decision ended the constitutional right to a woman's right to choose an abortion. It also allowed states to decide whether to restrict access to the procedure or not. We'll talk to an OBGYN about how reproductive health care has changed. Also, Vice President Kamala Harris says the blame should be placed directly at the feet of Donald Trump. Bishop William Barber will be here to talk about Saturday's Poor People's Campaign, Mass Poor People's and Low-Wage Workers Assembly, and more march in Washington, D.C. Folks, New York Congressman Jamaal Bowman is making the final push to get voters to the polls in his extremely tight and difficult re-election campaign in New York City. Plus, a New York pastor tells his congregants that the black church should come together to keep Trump out of office. Also, the black pastor, remember the black pastor who hosted Trump? He chose to go to Fox News, didn't want to come on our show. I got a few words. It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Well, a couple of years ago, thousands stood outside the Supreme Court when the decision came down in the Dobbs case overturning Roe v. Wade. With that decision, 21 states then banned or significantly restricted abortion. Those bans resulted in severe medical implications, such as limiting access to reproductive care, causing more women to die, and worsening health outcomes. Also, it has unleashed a political consequence. You've had Republicans losing at the ballot box. You've had ballot initiatives being passed in states like Kansas and Ohio. It's going to be on the ballot in Florida. And so it has been a major point of contention. You have conservatives who have been delighted because that was their goal since the day Roe v. Wade was instituted or passed by the Supreme Court. Well, now you, of course, have it on the ballot this year. Politicians on both sides are making the point that this election in November is going to be about a woman's right to choose. Others also talk about reproductive rights through the prism of privacy. Joining us right now is Dr. Donna Adams-Pickett. She is out of Augusta, Georgia. She's an OBGYN. Doc, glad to have you here. It has been quite the last 2 years, and what we've seen are harrowing stories of women who are facing severe medical issues, some of them facing death, and they've had to leave the state they're in, depending upon whether they have abortion access or not. We've seen stories out of Texas, out of Ohio, a young girl who was raped in Ohio, who had to leave the state, and I believe go to Missouri. And then we see folks in Missouri try to go after that doctor for providing that health care. And so it has certainly been a dramatic 2 years since this Dobbs decision.
It really has. It really has. You know, the problem, Roland, is that we have looked at abortion through the prism of that this is a termination of an undesired pregnancy, when it really, in most cases, is termination of an unsafe pregnancy. And the reality is we cannot have a discussion about reproductive justice without having a similar discussion about maternal mortality. It's no coincidence that the state that has the worst maternal mortality in this country, Mississippi, has one of the strictest abortion laws.
Well, I think what's also interesting is that when you talk about Mississippi, first and foremost, it was Mississippi that actually filed the case. But the crazy thing is they were not even asking the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court chose to go that additional step to overturn Roe v. Wade in its Dobbs decision. And the point that you make is right. In fact, there were several stories, analysis done that said, hey, once the decision was made, an additional 5,000 babies in Mississippi will be born every year, and they didn't have the capacity to be able to handle that, and they have an OBGYN crisis. So the folks who were trying to get rid of Roe v. Wade also were not dealing with the actual consequences of that decision.
Absolutely not. I mean, and this is, again, when we have non-clinicians who are involved in making decisions that involve medical knowledge. The reality is in 2022, there were 5.5 million pregnancies. 43% were due to contraceptive failure. So that means that 43% of these pregnancies that the moms did what they were supposed to do, and that they realized that they were not in any condition to take care of a pregnancy, whether it was physically, emotionally, or economically, and then found themselves pregnant. But now those individuals are not allowed to live with that medical error, because if the contraception failed, that's a medical error. That wasn't an error of judgment, that was a medical error.
Earlier, you made the point about doctors, the people who make decisions not being medical professionals. And the reality is you see how politics is playing out. Just more than a week ago, there was a congressional hearing, a United States Senate hearing. And then you had Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana with his fake accent, raising this issue and trying to highlight this problem as if it is a major issue, when this one sister had to go ahead and check him quite convincingly. Let me play that, folks. Here we go.
At that juncture, have the right, clearly a viable child, to abort the child. My example is not unrealistic.
I think that
if your answer, I want to save my time. If your answer is going to be that never happens, let me go to Ms. Fry. What do you think?
Well, Senator, first of all, if you don't ask a question if you don't want to know the answer. And I think 1%, but I'm saying to you, Senator, 1% of abortions happen at 21 weeks or later. Mm-hmm. So I think the premise of your question sets up a conversation about abortion that is unfair. It is rarely is that ever the instance. The vast majority of pregnancies and abortions that are considered late in a pregnancy have to do with severe, devastating medical circumstances. And I understand your point, Senator. I understand your point. But with all due respect, I also think the chances of people sort of getting all the way through a pregnancy and just sort of saying, I don't want it, is disrespectful to women.
And these are sort of the lies that we have seen told by Republicans and by others. I mean, it's crazy how they're advancing, that you have people who are just deciding to have an abortion in the 9th month.
Right. I mean, the reality is the larger percentage of these abortions or termination of pregnancies occur in the first trimester. between the 1st and 14th week of pregnancy. And as that very strong sister mentioned, that when we see late trimester, second trimester termination of pregnancies, that's usually due to a health issue with the mother or the child. But one of the things that this discussion rarely mentions is the patient who desires to carry a pregnancy to term, who truly wants to carry a pregnancy to term, and for whatever reason, medical complications arise that her body begins the process of terminating the pregnancy itself. And the hands of clinicians are tied in their effort to be able to intervene to help that mother's body along in a way that she remains alive and remains in a position where she can continue to have children in the future. If you recall, there was the case in Texas where the mother knew that if she continued with that pregnancy, not only was the life of the baby in danger, but her ability to carry other children in the future was in danger. And the hands of those clinicians were tied to be able to do so.
Right now, you have even attacks on folks. You have some Republicans who want to track women. You have others who are demanding access to hospitals out of state. They don't even have any jurisdiction. But the other point is that you have doctors who are frankly in limbo in some places. They don't know what the hell to do because of the laws, because in some cases, they're going to hold them personally liable.
Right, right. In some states, there are legal consequences for not only assisting a mother with termination of a pregnancy, even if her body is already in the process of doing so, even if they feel that the mother is in danger. But there are some laws that actually have bounties per se on the physician for facilitating transfer to other states that are more open with reproductive justice initiatives. And so one of the issues that faces our country in terms of maternal mortality is the rapidly decreasing numbers of OBGYNs. It is expected that in the next 5 years, we'll have fewer than about 3,000 OBGYNs. We have 2.2 million women in this country who live in counties that do not have OBGYNs. And right now, there is no encouragement for any medical student or resident to stay in this field, or for those like myself who are already board certified OBGYNs to continue obstetrics as part of our practice.
Well, it has certainly been a much different America the last couple of years as a result of this decision, and it will remain a political battle as well. Doc, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having the conversation, Roland.
I appreciate it. Got to go to a break. We come back. We'll chat about this with our panel. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairs of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today, there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the fourth leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP, get others to come, get a bus, get a van, get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
Hi, my name is Freddie Ricks. I'm from Houston, Texas.
My name is Sharon Williams. I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
Folks, Vice President Kamala Harris has been speaking out all across the country regarding reproductive rights. She recently held a conversation with Christy Teigen about this very issue, and again has made this a prominent part of the re-election campaign. Here is what she had to say.
This is a fight for freedom. The fundamental freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not having her government tell her what to do. 2 years ago today, I think many of us remember where we were. 2 years ago today, the highest court in our land, the Court of Thurgood and RBG, took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. And 2 years ago, on that day, I actually made a prediction that overturning Roe v. Wade would be the opening shot on a full-on assault, state by state, on reproductive freedom. And that is exactly what happened. Over the past 2 years, in states across our nation, extremists have proposed and passed laws that criminalize doctors and punish women, laws that limit access to contraception and to fertility treatments like IVF, even some of them trying to revive laws from the 1800s. Today in America, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age lives in a state with an abortion ban, many with no exception even for rape or incest. Today, our daughters know fewer rights than their grandmothers. This is a healthcare crisis, and we all know who was to blame: Donald Trump. And how do we know? Well, as many of you know, I'm a former prosecutor, so let's just look at the facts, shall we? When he was in the White House, Donald Trump handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court because he intended for them to overturn Roe v. Wade. And as he intended, they did. So, it was premeditated. Since, extremist legislators across our nation have passed ban after ban after ban, he had accomplices. And Trump has not denied, much less shown remorse for his actions. Instead, he, quote, proudly takes credit for overturning Roe. My fellow Americans, in a court of law, that would be called an admission. And some would say a confession, all pointing to the ultimate issue. In the case of the stealing of reproductive freedom from the women of America, Donald Trump is guilty. And over the past 2 years, we have seen the impact of these Trump abortion bans, the horrific, heartbreaking reality that women have been facing every single day in our country. Women have been refused care during a miscarriage, turned away from the emergency room, and only given care when they develop sepsis. We have seen attacks on IVF. Women denied the freedom to make some of the most personal decisions in their lives. And understand, as much harm as he has already caused, a second Trump term would be even worse. His friends in the United States Congress are trying to pass a national ban that would outlaw abortion in every single state, in states like New York and California, and even right here in Maryland. And we all know if Donald Trump gets the chance, he will sign that ban. And how do we know? Well, when Congress tried to pass a national ban in 2017, he endorsed it. And he promised to sign it if it got to his desk. And now he wants us to believe he will not sign a national abortion ban. Look, enough with the gaslighting.
All right, folks, my panel, Dr. Julian Malveaux, economist, president emerita, been in college, also author out of D.C., Dr. Amakongo Dabinga, senior professorial lecturer, School of International Service, American University, also joining us from D.C., Dr. Nyambe Carter, associate professor, University of Maryland School of Public Policy out of D.C. as well. Julian, I'll start with you. It has been certainly a 2 years that has seen massive upheaval. And when you listen to progressive women and others who say they were shocked and stunned, I don't understand how, considering Republicans and conservatives have made it perfectly clear for 4 decades they want to get rid of Roe v. Wade. The problem is that people on the progressive side just simply thought that it was settled law and that they were never going to try to undermine it. Well, they did. That was their goal, and they achieved it.
You know, Roland, it's very interesting. First of all, it's like some of these so-called progressive women look at fat meat and think it ain't greasy. In other words, the orange man said he was going to do, he did it, and he'll do it again. He found the most conservative and younger judges. Amy Coney Barrett is not yet 50 years old. Found these younger judges who lied. They perjured themselves when they spoke to the Senate. They said that they accepted Roe as established law, but then they went on and did what they were going to do, and it's absurd. But let's not get twisted. It's not just Roe. Your cousin on the Supreme Court, I'm not disparaging your family, I'm just saying your cousin, Mr. Thomas, has also thrown into the hopper interracial marriage, gay marriage, and a number of other things that have been established. So we know that this is happening, and the question is, well, there's nothing that can be done about it in terms of this Supreme Court. Expanding the court, I don't think is the greatest idea in the world, because everybody can expand and contract it once that happens. But it's really very clear that the former president has a very conservative agenda that he bojangles around when he has the opportunity. In other words, well, let's let it go to the states. Meanwhile, you're interested in a federal ban. That man is evil. We know that he's evil. I, Roland, ask everyone who's listening to please Google Project 2025 and understand what he has up his sleeve. But this is the least of it. This is literally the least of it. He'd like to do more.
Nyambe, this has been, again, a battle that's been waged in courts, a battle that's been waged in Congress, in state legislatures all across this country, even down to the local level. You've seen efforts by Republicans to go after the abortion pill. You've seen in that Dobbs ruling where Clarence Thomas talked about going after birth control. And so this is not over. This fight continues, and folk need to understand that is the case. Conservatives are going to continue to push their agenda. You now have a progressive group that announced a 10-year, $100 million effort to expand reproductive rights access. This is something they should have been planning and doing before this. Now they have no choice but to fight state by state until they potentially can get 5 progressive justices on the Supreme Court. As long as they have that 6-3 conservative majority, they will be in control and have the power.
Well, I think what Dr. Malveaux was talking about is sort of the gravity of all of this. It's never about one decision or one singular person. It's about what these forces combined can do together. And let's be clear, the right has been waiting a very long time to get to this point. Donald Trump got them over the finish line of where they want to go, but they're not done yet. And they want him to have a second term because he's promised, that he is going to appoint more judges, not just in the Supreme Court, but in the lower courts, younger, less experienced judges. I mean, for, your audience, I think about this. I'm in my 40s now. Clarence Thomas has been a Supreme Court justice since I was in middle school. So when we think about people like Amy Coney Barrett, who could be there for a very long time, and the things that they're talking about that they want to go after, same-sex marriage, interracial marriage, all of these kinds of things are to erode people's individual choices and to give the government a greater say in our lives. So if you think about that, I mean, part of what these medical decisions are about your privacy. And so for them to talk about being able to track you from state to state to prevent you from going to get abortion is about the government being able to encroach on your private medical records and be able to make decisions about your life. So it's never just about abortion. It is never just about these particular personalities, because in some ways these people are interchangeable. It's about the mission. And Donald Trump and those like him are about appointing people who are going to be about their mission. And if they have their way, the future for us is going to be much more dire than I think most people appreciate, because it always sounds like doom and gloom, but it is doom and gloom. It's here, people. I mean, these people are spreading that pain around.
Congo?
Look, I feel like we should have learned a lesson when we saw what they were doing against voting rights, when they were starting to roll that back. That should have let us know that nothing was going to be safe as it relates to what they were willing to do to try to maintain power. So now here we are as it relates to women's reproductive rights. And I feel like people also are getting a little bit comfortable because there have been so many gains in terms of across different states as it relates to these referenda. But just because people may have voted for a referendum, it doesn't necessarily mean that in November they're going to vote for actual individuals, right? And so I think that people need to who have this mindset of, oh, well, we've had these little victories, we're going to be fine. We can't drop the ball, like you said at the start of this segment. And so if we don't get it together now, and look, I'm like, hey, expand the court, whatever it's going to take to give my daughters more rights, the same amount of rights that my wife had, or, the same amount of rights that my mom had in Congo, whatever it takes, we got to do that. We got to fight back. And our mindset of we got it all figured out, we're good, is what got us here in the first place. We should have expected them to do what they did. But I believe that if we keep going, you kept talking about the importance of using Vice President Kamala Harris as a messenger. She's been out there strong. So this is where we are. No time to complain. We got to keep fighting and keep supporting these organizations. But this has to be the last time that we get caught off guard, because these guys are schemers and do whatever they can to maintain power. And so we have to learn the lessons now, because if not, just forget about it.
It is going to be a continuous battle, and trust me, it will play out big time at the ballot box in November. All right, got to go to break, folks. When we come back on Roland Martin Unfiltered, more to talk about, including the preview to Saturday's Poor People's Campaign mass rally taking place here in Washington, D.C. We will be on the scene covering that live. Folks, this is the kind of work that we do here, that we want you to support us in our efforts. Please, our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each, which comes out to $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. Your support allows us to travel this country, covering the stories that matter, that other people are not talking about. This show 5 days a week, the other weekly shows that we have, all of those shows are critically important to, again, speak into our issues. And so send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, and download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, financial literacy. Without it, wealth is just a pipe dream. And yet, half of our schools in this country don't even teach it to our kids. You're going to hear from a woman who's determined to change all that, not only here, but around the world.
World of Money is the leading provider of immersive financial education for children ages 7 to 18. We provide 120 online and classroom hours of financial education.
That's right here on Get Wealthy on Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Dr. Gerald Horne, a man regarded by many as the most important historian of our time. He provides us a history lesson I'm betting you've never heard before.
Texas enslavers who planned to continue the conflict even after Appomattox, even after the formal surrender of Robert E. Lee.
Dr. Horne talks about his new book, The Counter-Revolution of 1836, Texas, Slavery, and Jim Crow, and the Roots of U.S. Fascism. You do not want to miss this conversation. Only on the Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
My name is Lena Charles, and I'm from Opelousas, Louisiana. Yes, that is Zydeco capital of the world.
My name is Margaret Chappelle. I'm from Dallas, Texas, representing the Urban Trivia Game.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you watch.
Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
On tomorrow, Congressman Jamaal Bowman will find out whether the fight for his political life continues or ends. He'll be facing Westchester County Executive George Latimer to represent the 16th Congressional District in New York. It has been a bitter campaign as Latimer has been supported by significant dollars from Republicans and AIPAC. Bowman has been fighting back charges that he's anti-Semitic, does not support Jews in his district, and on and on and on. They even have been, angry with him because of a profane speech he gave over the weekend.
AIPAC is scared to death. That is why they are spending record amounts of money in this race, because they are afraid they have already lost, because the district, the American people, and the world are with us. They are in this race because we call for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. And we're going to keep calling for a permanent ceasefire. Ceasefire now! 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 We are not going to stand silent while U.S. tax dollars kills babies and women and children. My opponent supports genocide. My opponent and AIPAC are the ones destroying our democracy. And it is on us, it is on all of us to save our democracy.
Earlier today, I talked with Congressman Bowman about this campaign and the race. Congressman Bowman, money. There's a lot of money being spent in this race opposing you, but the reality is votes always trumpets money. What has your team been focused on when it comes to a ground game, early voting, but also when it comes to election day tomorrow?
You know, from the very beginning, we've been speaking to all registered voters and non-registered voters. We've had a very robust voter registration program up now for several months. And we've been targeting not just the triple prime voters, you know, the voters who vote in every single election, but those who may have never voted in any election or those who have voted in generals but not primaries. And so we've been targeting them with our phone banks, with our mailers, and most importantly, on the doors. You know, our volunteer army is about 1,000 strong, over 1,000 strong. We've put a lot of money into paid field as well, because that direct voter connection, there's nothing more powerful than that. And so we've been doing that for several months. We've had over 21,427 conversations. And we're doing very well with those conversations. Now we just got to get people out to vote. That's the number one thing.
So much of this race has been focused on Israel. You made a point in the debate that you don't represent the state of Israel, you represent the South Bronx. And so what have you been hearing on the campaign trail from voters across the district who wants the issue to be focused upon what's happening among the 700,000 people that reside in your congressional district?
Yeah, it's been a consistent tension since I've gotten into office. There's a strong group of primary Democratic voters who are pro-Israel, quote unquote. And Israel is their single most important number one issue. And I do my best to listen to them and to learn from them and to represent them as well. But I also share consistently that the majority of the people in this district care about affordable housing and being able to afford their utilities and jobs and workforce development and violence reduction and public education. And so, you know, it's been a challenging balance to balance the two, but I have to remain focused here on what the majority of the people here want. And I also support the state of Israel and the state of Israel's right to exist, and I support a two-state solution. However, that has also come with, you know, periodic critiques of the Israeli government, particularly as it relates to what's happening right now in Gaza. And so, unfortunately, remember, you know, it was Elliot Hingle here for 30 years before, you know, we won in 2020. And so there haven't been these more well-rounded conversations about Israel-Palestine. They've only been one-sided. So now it's, I guess, jarring to many in the district that we're actually talking about the humanity of Palestinians, which I think is essential for the safety of Israel going forward.
And so, with that, you've got, you know, AIPAC. You are their number one target. You have hit them for the millions of dollars that are being spent. You've got a lot of money that's come from Republican donors who also want to take you out as well. Do you see, and this is not just you, we saw the targeting of Summer Lee in Pittsburgh. You've got Cori Bush in St. Louis, Ayanna Pressley in Massachusetts. You know, this is a coordinated effort to go after what some will call the squad or very progressive members of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's incredibly alarming and incredibly dangerous to our democracy, because the right-wing Republicans that are funding AIPAC, they also fund initiatives to take away our voting rights, to take away affirmative action, to take away our reproductive rights and other civil rights that we have fought and died for. They support 109 Republicans who voted to overturn the election in 2020. So this is a dangerous move to the right, very aggressive move to the right for the entire country, and is driven by big money Republican billionaires meddling in a Democratic primary, which has now become the most expensive primary in United States history. And so, you know, whether you agree or disagree with me on an issue or two or three, we have to ask ourselves, are we going to allow Republican billionaires to buy a congressional seat from the people? And my hope is that answer is hell no, we're not. And we're going to get to the polls in record numbers to stop that from happening.
On that particular point there, there's no coincidence that the folks I also mentioned are all African-American. And so what does that say about the Congressional Black Caucus has the largest bloc among the Democratic caucus. What does this say? What does this signal to African Americans, this direct targeting of Black lawmakers by AIPAC and by these Republican donors?
You know, it's a reminder of our history, I think. When you look throughout American history, whenever Black or brown people have been outspoken, particularly Black people, we have been targeted. We've been targeted with smearing, with lynching, and everything in between. And so this is just the modern day version of this. We're being targeted politically, not just for our seats, but for our livelihoods. Because the way the smear ads and the attacks have come in this particular race, they're not just thinking about, getting me out of this seat. They're thinking about, post-election, what happens to my life and my career and my family. We've received death threats. My family has been written about. My kids have been written about. This is what's happening. This is what they're doing. And so it's a stark reminder of the reality that we're living in. But it's also, in my opinion, an urgent call to circle the wagons around each other so that we can support and protect and uplift each other and continue to fight and rescue America from itself, because America has always needed Black people to rescue it from itself. And we need that to save our democracy in this moment and to uplift our overall humanity. Because we're going down a dark path if we allow elections to be bought. It's already been happening quietly. This is just probably one of the loudest times it's happened in recent memory.
When you look at endorsements, obviously politicians, target endorsements. But when you've got Hillary Clinton supporting your opponent, when you've got former Congressman Mondaire Jones, someone who was a colleague of yours when serving in the Congress before he lost in the last congressional race. Do you put much stock in endorsements? And just your thoughts about that?
It depends. No, I don't put much stock in those two particular endorsements in this particular district. Mr. Jones has never represented this community. And the one time he thought about running in this district, his polling showed him that would not be a good choice. And Secretary Clinton, with all due respect, also doesn't live near or engage this district or community at all. And while, she has been a pillar of Democratic politics in the past, the people here are looking for a vision for the future. And I believe that the people know that vision is represented by people like me and Ayanna Presley and Hakeem Jeffries, who has endorsed us, and Pete Aguilar, who has endorsed us, and Catherine Clark, as well as even older senators like Senator Sanders, who many credit as being one of the inspirations for the squad running for office and winning. I know he was an inspiration of mine. Senator Sanders was, Senator Elizabeth Warren as well. We've also been endorsed by Maxine Waters, who I think is the godmother of all of us as it speaks to racial justice and so many other issues. And so we like our endorsements, and I think our endorsements capture more of the future of the Democratic Party as opposed to my opponent's endorsements.
For folks who don't know, what's the makeup of your district?
So it's a majority minority district. The largest minority is Latino by a few percentage points. My district covers the Northeast Bronx and Southern Westchester County. So Co-op City in the Bronx, Baychester, Edenwald in the Bronx, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, in Westchester, all the way up to White Plains. It includes Portchester, Greenburgh, the river towns, the Sound Shore, Scarsdale, Ardsley, Tuckahoe, and a few smaller municipalities in the middle.
And so with that, being a majority minority district, elections and primaries comes out to turnout. And so when we look at turnout in primaries, they're not significant. They're not high. So obviously motivated voters are the ones that turn out. How are you really getting your people to understand in the next 36 hours how critically important it is to have minorities in your district really vote their numbers. They vote their numbers, then it should be a fairly easy election night.
Yes, not easy, but yes, it should be a victorious election night. You know, everything I've shared on this call and in this conversation, we have shared with the voters. We have told them from the very beginning, this is GOP billionaires trying to buy this congressional seat from you, the people, simply because I call for a ceasefire in Gaza and because I speak up for Black and brown people here. And simply because I don't think we should be sending billions of dollars to Benjamin Netanyahu to engage in collective punishment when those billions could be coming here to help us with the issues we have here on the ground. So we've articulated that from the very beginning in a variety of ways. You know, the key to most campaigns is 7 to 8 quality touches on a voter to get them out to vote. And that's what we've been focused on for several months. And those touches include the phone, the text, the mailers, the doors, and the ads. And so we're hopeful and prayerful that we've done enough to get people out. I could tell you the energy I feel in the community. I mean, I can't jump out my vehicle in Mount Vernon or the Bronx or certain parts of the district and walk like a step without people like surrounding me with love and support and like frustration and outrage that they're being bombarded with ads and mailers that they know do not represent my record or who I am as a person. So what the other side may have done is piss people off enough in terms of our supporters so that now you got them motivated to vote. That's the energy I'm seeing all throughout the district.
You had a rally and you used some choice language at that rally, and you've had folks like Congressman Richie Torres say this is conduct unbecoming of a member of Congress. Your response?
You know, it's interesting. We're sending bombs and billions to Benjamin Netanyahu to kill babies and women and children, but my language is brought into question. We can't raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, so we keep tens of millions of people in poverty as a result, but you're worried about my language. We got guns as the #1 killer of children in our country for the first time in history, replacing car accidents. And we have a simultaneous mental health crisis amongst our children that we're doing nothing about, but you're worried about my language. To paraphrase James Baldwin, to be Black and someone conscious in America is to live in, subdued outrage, if you will. And so I'm outraged. And every now and then, especially when you're coming after my family and myself and whatever, and, you know, I'm not a career politician. I'm not always going to have the proper decorum, but I guarantee you I will be expressing the emotions of the people who are also outraged, who want to see our government work for them. And so, you know, my apologies to anyone who was offended by my language, but I think we all need to be outraged. What's happening in our world should facilitate a march on Washington every week, because we allowing 1 in 5 children to go to bed hungry. We allow 9 million children across the globe to die every year because they don't have access to clean water. But we spend $1 trillion a year on the military that kills innocent babies and children and women. This is not governance. This is not humanity. We need our humanity back. And if a few choice words is going to lead us to that, then so be it.
Congressman Bowman, last comment. If there is somebody out there watching, listening, they are straddling the fence, they're unsure if they want to vote for you, or they're unsure if they want to vote, period, what do you say to them?
Vote to send a lifelong educator back to Congress, a middle school principal for 10 and a half years, educated for 20 years, who literally has served the community directly my entire adult life. Raised by a single mom, come from the working class, will always fight for marginalized people and will always fight for justice and growth and a vision for America that includes everyone. That's what our country is supposed to be about. That's what we need in Congress. Not someone who is bought and paid for, who calls himself a Democrat, but they're funded by Republican billionaires to engage in pay-to-play status quo politics, who don't agree with Biden on raising taxes on the wealthy, don't agree with universal health care, and don't agree with urgent an urgent response to climate justice. We need the right people in Congress who come from the working class and understand the struggles and dreams of everyday people. And I think I am that person. So please vote June 25th. Do not stay home. Do not sit this one out.
All right, Congressman Jamaal Bowman, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
What you do see happening on the Congo, it is a direct attack, as I question Congressman Bowman, of black members of Congress by AIPAC. As I said, Congresswoman Summer Lee in Pittsburgh, Congressman Jamaal Bowman, Congresswoman Cori Bush, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. And so, what do you make of this direct attack on them?
First of all, I think it's extremely important that interviews like that happen, that people get an opportunity who are part of this constituency that's being attacked by AIPAC speak out, and that we continue to shine a light on what AIPAC is doing. I mean, AIPAC is a single issue voting organization, and what Representative Bowman and some Representative Lee and others are doing are calling attention to the greater issues within their own community. And then to see people like, Hillary Clinton, insert herself into this, it's extremely problematic. Kind of makes me wish that people like Obama and them would come out and endorse. But really, at the end of the day, this is leading to a particular type of infighting that is counterproductive for the Democratic Party. And that's one. The second issue is that I appreciate the fact that Representative Bowman is talking about all of the love that he's getting in his community, but it has to translate into votes. Every day, Roland, on this show, you talk about the level of sophistication that we need to have as relates to our politics, as relates to getting registered, about the importance of making sure that if we get out to protest, we're also getting out to the voting booth, because ultimately that's more important than the protest. So everybody who's showing up at the rallies and so on and so forth, Representative Bowman can win this. I mean, for him to say that this is the most expensive primary in American history, Roland, this race, and we know that there's only going to be more as these other ones get targeted. So it's time that we use this opportunity to expose AIPAC for what it is. It's time that we use this opportunity to encourage our people on the ground to continue to support their grassroots, homegrown candidates. And it's really high time that we continue to show that people who speak for us and our communities are always going to have platforms here and everywhere else. Black Star Network has always been about that, but there are so many other places that need to do the same thing. This is going to help us keep our communities. And just lastly, this whole thing about profanity, are these guys who are talking about his profanity saying anything about Trump? I don't think so.
Niambi?
Well, I mean, I think this race, but others that you highlighted, signal the real dangers of a group like AIPAC. They're very well funded, and while their general issue around protection of Israel or making sure that Israel and Israeli people are safe, in general, I think most people are like, that's fine. But when you target in particular politicians of color around a single issue, I think it highlights, the limits sometimes of political coalition, because when you look historically, you've seen Jewish people and Black people coalescing together. But here we have what seems like a sort of devolution of that relationship, where you have these particular organizations going after almost exclusively candidates and office holders of color, because they don't like their sort of perspective on this conflict. Not whether Israel has a right to exist, not whether Israel has a right to defend itself, not whether Jewish people should be safe, but don't really want to address these human rights questions, and therefore endanger not just the lives of people of color, but all of us, because the kind of people that they want to get in office because they think they're going to support Israel are not only dangers, right? These issues around Israel are really useful for them because it allows them to push a far-right agenda that ultimately makes even Jewish lives less safe. So I think we have to think about this in a sort of multi-level kind of way, and not let AIPAC's single issue sidetrack the rest of us from what the business at hand is.
Julian?
AIPAC is the enemy of Black people. AIPAC is the enemy. None of us disputes the issue of Israel's right to exist, but we dispute the ability of this PAC to go after our people, Summer Lee, now Jamaal Bowman, to spend $14 million trying to unseat this man by a tepid little white man who basically has nothing to bring Black people. We, Black and Jewish people, have had a centuries-long or decades-long alliance, but the alliance has been fraying as Black people have chosen to speak up. And that's what Jamaal has done. He's spoken up. Nobody, I mean, there are 33,000 minimum, last time I checked, Palestinian children who've been killed. Who co-signs that? Who co-signs that? Anybody with a conscience would say, no, enough, enough. So I admire Jamaal Bowman for his sagacity, for his tenacity, for his willingness to say, oh, hell no. The challenge is not around Bowman, it's whether or not his team can get the people out. Where people can get out and vote. Is the Bronx for sale? That's the question that he's asking. And, I think both of my colleagues have raised the question and said, no. I mean, I think Omekongo has really raised the question very appropriately. I think that Nyambe also, in terms of talking about what we have in front of us. But the bottom line here is that Israel believes they can buy members of Congress, and they are especially targeted vulnerable Black members of Congress. And we have to push back. We simply have to push back. If they're our allies, they need to stop it. They just need to stop it and let the people choose.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. When we come back, we'll chat with Reverend Dr. William Barber about Saturday's rally in the nation's capital, focusing on poor and low-wage workers. That's next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we meet Ricky Fairley. She was given a death sentence by her doctor 11 years ago. But for Ricky, giving up was not an option. She declared war on her disease, turned her entire life upside down, and won the battle.
I know that God left me here to do this work. And when you talk about faith, faith is what got me through. I mean, I had to relinquish my faith and give my life to God and say, okay, God, what have you got for me? And He gave me my purpose. And that's why I'm here.
Her amazing story of strength, balance, and survival here on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Latasha from the A.
And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, on Saturday in the nation's capital, there will be a mass rally focusing on poor and low-wage workers. The Poor People's Campaign has been working diligently on this. Their goal is very simple, and that is to educate America on the reality facing poor and low-wage workers, but also to galvanize those individuals to use their voting power all across the country. For the last several weeks, you've seen us running this commercial right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, rallying people to come to Washington, D.C. We're going to play a portion of it.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairs of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with more religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the fourth leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP. Get others to come. Get a bus. Get a van. Get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
Joining us right now is Reverend Dr. William Barber. Doc, glad to have you.
Doc, I'm glad to come on and listen. I apologize, I'm in a 2-hour zone trip over here in Denver, but things are moving in a powerful way. I just got a report that hundreds of buses are coming. And I want to read your audience something, because this effort is also not just a gathering, but a commitment to touch 15 million poor and low-wage voters at least 3 times between now and November through a plan that we put together. But this study just released. In Georgia, for example, Biden won by almost 12,000 votes in 2020. North Carolina lost by 74,000. But in both states, more than 1 million eligible low-income, poor and low-income voters will likely not vote if past trends continue. But then the study says, looking at exit polls from 2020, who they will likely vote for, low-income voters would vote for, if they did the turnout in 2024, of the 1.3 million likely non-voters in Georgia, 746,000 would likely be Biden voters. Of the 1.1 million in North Carolina, 594,000 would likely be Biden voters. In short, the truth of the matter is poor and low-wage voters, what the data tend to vote progressive, but too often they are left out of the debates, they're left out of the campaign ads, their communities are not visited, and so they turn off. The number one reason is nobody talks to them, but the data shows if you did, in all of the so-called battleground states and beyond, poor and low-wage voters are the largest potential swing vote in this country and could reshape public policy, could reshape how we decide the Supreme Court, so forth and so on. This is not an exercise in futility. This is serious grappling with the possibility of raising up a new electorate that can fundamentally shift the economic architecture and the political architecture of the country.
When we talk about, again, mobilizing, organizing, and I say this constantly, it drives me crazy, because when I see that, what y'all are doing is not saying, hey, let's come to D.C. on a weekend. Let's have some speeches. Let's have some gatherings. Let's get together and have a good time, smile, take selfies, post on social media. Walk folks through the type of organizing that has been taking place and the teaching and the training that has been going on.
That's right. Well, one of the things we started on March the 2nd was simultaneous gatherings in 32 states. To make sure that we reach down all the way to the state level. In addition, we built a coalition of 35 anchor organizations, which now have a constituency base of 60 million people. And all of those will be cross-posted on Saturday. All of the speakers will be poor and low-income persons or religious leaders, but they will be drilling down this power dynamic. Then in addition to that, while this is going on, we've been organizing 200 people in every state, 200 peers, people we know we touch, because 200 people in 35 states plus the District of Columbia who will use the technology we have to touch 45 people a day, 6 days a week for 8 straight weeks can touch over 15 million poor and low-wage people. So this is a very serious effort. And then, Roland, when they touch these people in terms of voting, we will also have now this coalition built for keeping people accountable, after the election. I said to Delta Sigma Theta, I spoke for them the other day, if they took 10,000 of the 350,000 Deltas, trained them in this technology, they could do the same thing, and in 5 weeks, they could reach all 34 million potential black voters in this country. We are in a place, Roland, where we don't have to just have a gathering. We can have true mobilization and true organizing, but it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment, Roland. It's not just get on the bus and come.
But also there's an agenda attached.
Oh yes.
And how are y'all conveying it to the folks, these voters, to understand that it's one thing to complain about what's not being done. It's another, though, to drive your agenda.
Exactly. One of the things that we're saying to folk is you don't just get out here and rah-rah and say what you hate. You have to turn to go on the offense. So when you have power, real legitimate power, you don't just complain, you go on the offense with that power. But what we're saying is our power is not Democratic power, Republican power, it's the power of issues. So we have a 17-point agenda. That agenda is being taught across the country. It'll be taught on Saturday. We've reduced it to a page back and front with the question, did you know, for instance, that poor and low wage, that poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in the country, killing 295,000 people a year. Therefore, we stand for this. Therefore, we stand for this. And we're laying that agenda out and saying, this is where you judge the candidates. You measure them on how close do they come, 90%, 80%, 60%, 0% to this agenda. And that's where you put your work. We've also written all the members of Congress, the leadership of Congress, Senate and House, demanding that they bring 3 pieces of legislation up prior to November so people know where they stand. Living wages, at least $15 an hour plus unions, health care, and voting rights. We say we need to see where people stand on these issues now. They need to vote on them now. Also, on Saturday, we will have a letter we'll release to the networks and to all of the campaigns and that are coming up in their conventions saying, here is this agenda. If you want these voters, go after them. If you want these voters, here's what's on their mind. Here's what they're concerned about. And we're going to have thousands of people sign on and then deliver that to the convention. You know, Roland, this is not elections for 6th grade student government. You know, this is about not only saving the democracy, but what kind of democracy will we save and will we have? And poor and low wage voters, based on the data, are the biggest swing voter. And one of the things we've got to do, Roland, lastly, is stop saying things that are hyperbole and not rooted in facts. Like I used to say that, for instance, white voters vote against their own self-interest. Well, they do. Some black people do that. But in the majority, according to the data, most poor and low-wage people making $50,000 or less, family of 4, tend to vote for issues that impact what they can eat, what kind of lights they can have, what kind of medicine they can get for their children and their family. Those are the issues that really matter. And I'm not saying everybody, but there's a broad group out there that if you connect them with black folk and Latino folk and Asian folk, you don't reduce the issue of race, you deepen it, you expand it, you connect it, you can actually build this powerful block. And that's what we're trying to do.
Questions from our panel. Nyambe, you first.
So, Reverend Barber, thank you again. I mean, you've been doing this work for a while. Are you seeing kind of any positive changes out there? Are you seeing, I mean, you've been in the trenches for a long time. Are you seeing this forward movement, or are you seeing people maybe regressing to the corners or the places where they're most comfortable?
Well, you know, one of the sad things, except for places like Roland and a couple other folks, people don't talk about the changes and where they are. Take, for instance, in North Carolina. In North Carolina, last election, we had a 10-3 Republican-Democrat delegation. We fought in the courts to overturn the racist voter redistricting plan, got it changed, and then we had an election. It can clearly be shown that poor and low-wage people were the difference makers to change North Carolina from 10-3 to 7-7. I mean, 10-4 to 7-7. But you don't hear about that. In Kentucky, when Beshear won, Beshear unseated an incumbent Trumpite, an incumbent Tea Partier. He unseated him a couple of years ago, and the data shows that when he went to Eastern Kentucky, where poor, low-wage white people are, and Louisville, poor, low-wage black people, and said, if you elect me, I'm going to deal with living wages, health care, and felony re-enfranchisement, that he got counties that had been formerly, quote-unquote, red to turn. This message of this reality of turning is possible. When I was in the Moral Monday movement in North Carolina, we were the only state through building this kind of coalition that unseated an incumbent, regressive, mean-spirited governor, and two incumbent Tea Partiers who were state legislators. And the PPP polling said if it had not been for the Moral Monday organizing and mobilizing, that would have not happened in North Carolina. So across the board, we have seen in Georgia, when you look at Ossoff and shoot, I can't even think. Warnock. If you look at their races and pull back, take out poor and low-wage voters from their victory total, they lose. But you don't hear that talked about. If you look at Kamala and Biden, poor and low-wage voters voted 54% in the majority. The problem is, and I'm glad you asked the question, my sister, is most of the time in the larger media, if they talk about the wealthy and the middle class, and they don't talk about this swing vote. 135 million poor and low-wage people, 87 million voters, 57 million who voted in the last election, and 30 million who didn't. And we don't even know what kind of power what kind of change could happen, because we've not seen a massive offensive going after poor and low-wage voters. Well, our goal is to make sure that America sees it. If the greatest fear of wealthy, greedy oligarchs in this country are the masses of poor black people and white people and brown people and Asians and others coming together and forming a bloc, then we're going to realize their fear. Because we've seen places where there have been changes, you just don't hear it in the larger media.
Thank you.
Congo.
Reverend Barber, thank you for being such a hero in this field of and just inspiring so many of us to do more. I am wondering why, with all of this talk about the election is going to be won on the margins, why do you feel, or what do you feel like the Biden administration should be doing to embrace the agenda of your campaign? Because I know there hasn't been a meeting, and it seems like there are so many voters that could be helping him in his favor, and he seems to have some policies that could help this community. What do you feel is the reluctance as it relates to him outwardly embracing the campaign?
Well, you know, both parties have just not dealt with poor and low-wage folk. Well, just be quite honest, it's kind of a stuck on stupid. And you know, even Celinda Lake, who's one of the major researchers who can be trusted in this, says it's political suicide not to focus on these issues. But these consultants, they try to find, like they call it, the blue gate or the blue line or the blue fence, or Republicans say, well, we don't need it. They say that poor and low-wage people are poor because of their own immorality. Democrats tend to talk in metaphors. We're trying to reach those who are trying to make it into the middle class. But you know, we've decided we can't figure out why. We've got to make them hear us because our lives and the lives of poor people are on the line. You heard me say 800 people are dying now a day from poverty, not because of COVID, just because of poverty. And so it does not make any sense. And I'll say this loudly, that in Michigan, the margin of victory was 10,000 in presidential election, and there were over 1 million poor and low-wage voters that did not vote, and they were not aggressively gone after. Wisconsin, 20,000, over 1 million poor and low-wage voters, they were not gone after aggressive. Pennsylvania, 40,000 was the margin, 2 million poor and low-wage voters, they were not gone after aggressively. And you heard me say North Carolina last time, 74,000, and you had over 1 million, and they were not gone after aggressively. And I don't know why, but we're going to keep demanding that you would not have in the Oval Office a meeting with poor and low-wage people. Part of the problem is, Doc, and I'll tell you this, people have gotten to this point that they want to meet with the leaders who claim they represent people. Now, I'm just be honest, I had offers for me to meet, but I ain't interested in that. And our team is not interested in that. I don't want to go meet unless you're going to allow me to bring the people who are the most impacted. And I said that when I met with the vice president. Glad to have the meeting. But the most moral, forceful people in this country are poor and low-wage people who still believe in this country, even though they catch hell every day. And if you really want to win, the key is talking to them, hearing them, and letting them carry the message. Let them say, I'm for this candidate because they are for these issues down the line. I don't know why I can't figure out, why it's foolish. These consultants need to quit it. But I do know the numbers are telling us it makes no political sense at all that a part of any major campaign, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whether you're running independent, running Green Party, any party, what you're running for, if you are walking away from a direct attempt to move 30 million poor and low-wage voters and just dismissing them, it is political foolishness.
Julian?
Sir, Brother Reverend, I appreciate you. You know I do. Everything you do is right on time for me. You talked a little bit, you and I have talked about the whole issue of hope, which I think is why so many young people are so disaffected. They don't see hope. You do.
Right.
But they're very, basically, they don't give a you-know-what. They don't think that their vote is going to make a difference. They don't think that activists can change. They have seen politicians betray them. And this is the folks who are like under 35. They could vote, as you say, they have the whole election in their hands, but they're not feeling it. They're not feeling any of it. What do you say to those folks? What do you say to them to make them more excited about this election?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Julian. I met 2 months ago with students from 10 HBCUs. In fact, they asked me to come join them in July. They're pulling together people from across the country. And I listened more than I did talk. And what I heard them say, that there were three issues they were concerned about. Number one, from a moral perspective, they were deeply concerned about Netanyahu and his brand of extremism and what they're doing to children and women in Gaza. They also said they didn't agree with Hamas, and what they did, but they were against hatred and killing, and they could not understand why people couldn't just say that and be clear in government. And that's their concern: is why can't we be against what is so obviously wrong? Number two, they said they were for living wages, and these young people said to me, what depressed a lot of them was we had one vote on the living wage to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. In 2020, I believe it was, or 2021. We haven't raised the minimum wage since 2009. And they said to me, about what in the world, why would we vote if we can't even get something as basic as a living wage done? And then, of course, they brought up voting rights. We flipped it over, and I said, well, there's one way to look at it. One way is to say it didn't happen. But what if you knew you had the power to change who's in office, and then you had the power to stay on them after you get in office? Because that's the piece I think we don't talk to folk enough about. Not just voting, but what do you do after voting? You remember when Obama got elected, and we have some agreement and disagreement with his administration, but he got elected, everybody turned out, and then the next election, everybody walked away. And then you had, the whole extremism takeover. But when you talk about building a plan to both exercise your power on both sides of the spectrum, I saw the young people say to me, we can get with that. We can get with that. We can't get with it something that just tells us, oh, vote and it'll be all right, and just vote for this person because he's better than Trump. They are not even interested in really voting for a personality. What they're looking for is principle. And what are you going to do? And I will tell you, it hurt, and I'll say this straight up, Democrats in a bad way. When you had power for the last 4 years, 8 Democrats joined 49 Republicans, and voted against raising the living wage for 55 million people in this country. And 2 Democrats joined 49 Republicans and voted to stop voting rights. And they only had 1 vote on those 2 things in the last 3 years. That was devastating. because people say it doesn't matter. We vote you in office and we get one vote and then you walk away from it. But on other things, people get multiple votes. We got to stop that. These politicians have got to stop it. If you believe in it, I believe Roland and Julianne, we should have been voting on the living wage every session, voting rights, every session, healthcare. I don't give a damn if they don't pass it. You should keep fighting for it because that's what inspires people. It's not necessarily that you win the first time. It's just that you don't give up after the first time.
Folks, we're going to be broadcasting live with complete coverage from Saturday's rally. Of course, you can get more information by going to, you can visit poorpeoplescampaign.org. You can also text MORAL, M-O-R-A-L, to 38542 as well. Reverend Barber, final comment.
Well, if you got a little piece of change, go to Repairs of the Breach. Repairs of the Breach is holding and mobilizing and organizing for this battle. And you can, give us a little something to breachrepairs.org to help us out. This is not without finances. But what we're doing is we're calling folk together. It doesn't cost you a dime to come. We want folk to be engaged, and we're serious about building a movement. And Roland, I want to thank you especially because I texted you, I think, earlier, that, I thought we might get, maybe 100 buses, and we're way up there now. I'm getting messages coming in. In fact, I've gotten calls with several states just said, we're not doing buses, we're going to take the plane, 2 planes. They paid for 2 planes, like a couple of planes, and just put people on there. And so we're moving, we're growing, and we intend to see this all the way through.
All right, then. Well, we will be there, have been supportive of day one. And again, you're doing it the right way, and that is, again, organizing and mobilizing the people to use their power. Reverend Barber, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Doc.
All right, folks, going to a break. We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support us in what we do, folks. Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. If you supported us during the show, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, I will definitely give you a shout out live on the air. We'll be right back.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Bishop William J. Barber II, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and president of Repairs of the Breach. And I'm calling on you to get everybody you know to join us on Saturday, June 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania and 3rd for the mass Poor People's Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, and the post effort to reach 15 million poor and low-wage infrequent voters who, if they vote, can change the outcome of our politics in this country.
Our goal is to center the desires and the political policy agenda of poor and low-wage persons, along with moral religious leaders and advocates. Too often, poor and low-wage people are not talked about, even though in this country today, there are 135 million poor and low-wage persons. There's not a state in this country now where poor and low-wage persons do not make up at least 30% of the electorate.
It is time that the issues of poor and low-wage people be at the center of our politics. Living wages, health care, things that matter in the everyday lives. We will no longer allow poverty to be the 4th leading cause of death in this country. We must let our voices be heard. Join us. Go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org. RSVP. Get others to come. Get a bus. Get a van. Get on the train. Come and let our voices be heard and our votes be felt. Lift from the bottom so that everybody rises.
Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC.
Hey, what's up? It's Tammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
right, folks. Now, we make it perfectly clear how trifling Donald Trump is. And you've got these folks out here giving excuses. I came across this clip of a New York pastor who just laid it out, speaking in Abyssinian Baptist Church. Here's Reverend Dr. Kevin Johnson. He broke it down.
If Pentecost is inevitable for the Christian church, then what needs to happen for Pentecost to come? What are the conditions that God is looking for? What are the circumstances that God requires before sending the Holy Spirit on Pentecost? But I'm glad you asked that question too. You see, the book of Acts tells us that God is looking for two things. God is looking for his people to be all together and in one place. This is not Kevin Johnson. This is right here in the Bible. It's Acts chapter 2, verse 1. I want to read it again. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Let me say it again. They were all together in one place. Let me talk to the balcony. They were all together in one place. Let me talk to the people online. They were all together in one place. You see, Pentecost will never come if the church is divided. Pentecost will never come if the church is fragmented. Pentecost will never come if the church is disjointed, splintered and fractured and torn apart and not unified and not together and not rowing in the same direction and not worshiping on one accord, not praying for one another, not serving with one purpose, not moving as one body, not loving as one family, and not standing as one church. The Bible says when they all were together in one place. What is Luke saying? Luke is trying to get the readers of this book to see that the power of Pentecost is in the unity of the church. They were all together in one place. How do we expect, beloved, to beat a xenophobic, white nationalist, white supremacist, bona fide racist, known sexist, documented bigot, celebrated insurrectionist, election denier, wannabe politician, 4 times indicted, twice impeached, recognized sexual assaulter, convicted fraud perpetrator, 91 felon charges in 4 states, who doesn't give a, I'm sorry, I'm in church, a blankety blank about black people if the black church, and especially if this black church is not united and together in one place. Beloved, if we are going to advance our people, we've got to be what? Together. This is not a time for Abyssinia not to be united. This is not a time for the flagship church of America to be at odds. This is not a time for God's house to be disunited. This is not a time for the black church to abdicate its prophetic manual. We've got to be together. Don't you know, beloved, that since 2021, Republican-controlled state houses have passed a swarm of laws to restrict voting rights, increase penalties for public protests, impose new restrictions on transgender youth, and ban books and limit what teachers and college professors and employers can say about race and gender and sexual orientation. This is not the time for the church to not be united. While we're sitting up here doing other stuff, they're planning a 2025. This is not the time for the church to not be united. We got to make sure the people get out and vote this November like never before. This is not the time. And the brothers who are at Morehouse this morning, you can't turn your back on Biden, because what are you turning your back to? Beloved, this is not the time. This is not the time.
Well, Well, that stands in stark contrast to the pastor in Detroit, Lorenzo Sewell, who hosted Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. Now, Sewell has done several interviews on MSNBC, on Fox News. We've extended the invitation to him for more than a week to come on this show, and he hasn't accepted. So I want to play for you for some of this stuff that he said on Fox News. And y'all know I got to break some of this down. So why don't you go ahead, and this is him, Pastor Lorenzo Sewell, talking to Laura Ingraham on Fox News.
All right, well, the celebrity set mostly hates Trump, and that's just fine by him. As Joe was rubbing elbows with Jimmy Kimmel and George Clooney, Trump was mixing it up in Detroit.
We've done more for, and I say this, I say it proudly, more for the black population than any president since Abraham Lincoln. That's a big statement. And crooked Joe Biden has done nothing for you except talk. It's only talk. It's all talk. He gets nothing. He gets nothing for anyone. He was lost. He's in Europe. He's walking around. He doesn't know where the hell he is, and he's supposed to help Detroit. I don't think so.
Now, the reaction on the ground in deep blue territory was big. Trump won't win Detroit. He'll probably lose by a fairly wide margin, but he's actually still working for the votes. And he's getting a lot of respect just for showing up.
President Trump, I'm so humbled that you would be here. President Obama never came to the hood, so to speak, right? President Joe Biden, he went to the big NAACP dinner, but he never came to the hood. So thank you.
Joining us now is Lorenzo Sewell, senior pastor at 180 Church, and the man you just heard, pastor. Now, he lost Detroit by, what, 94% last time around? So what does Donald Trump's outreach mean to the community?
When you are in the worst of the worst, you're talking about women being human trafficked literally on the street next to us. You're talking about a methadone clinic where 500 people go every single day that are generationally addicted. When the president is willing to come and bring his presence, he is gaining relational equity, or we would call it in our community, street credibility.
Well, and you think about...
Freeze right there. Okay, first of all, let's have a correction right here. First of all, he's not president. So Pastor Sewell's grossly incorrect there. Then he said, he lays out these problems. But you notice Pastor Sewell at no point there said what Trump did when he was in the Oval Office about those problems. See, so it's one thing to say he came to your church while he's trying to get some votes, but you said nothing about where was he for 4 years when he was in the Oval Office. Keep in mind, this is the same man who denigrated black election workers in Detroit, but I guess Pastor Sewell wasn't familiar with those type of comments that Donald Trump made about black people in Detroit. Press play.
The fact that policies that are put forward by, right now, the Democrat Party, whether it's an open border, the bad inflation, the high cost of living, gas, all of that, that just is a killer for everybody, but it's especially bad for lower income Americans, including minorities. How big is the open border first with your community?
Well, we already are fighting for jobs, right? And when you have people coming into our community that, quite frankly, haven't come the right way, not only do we serve in Detroit, but we serve in Pontiac, and Pontiac is about 35% Latino. And in that community, as I talk to those that we serve, they're upset. They're mad because they felt like they came to the country the right way, and there are people that are coming the wrong way. So there is an angst, and when President Trump came to our community, it shows that his presence, he's gaining our value, he's gaining our voices, and I believe he's going to gain our vote.
Well,
Stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there. See, this right here is the sheer stupidity that Pastor Sewell is advancing. Oh, because Donald Trump dropped by, because he came to our community, that, oh, now all of a sudden, that means that he's going to get our vote because he actually showed up. Did he show up for 4 years in the Oval Office? Did he do that? See, if you think that's all it requires for him to get your vote, you are what we call the least expensive Negro. That's what you're called. And so here, Sewell, again, going on Laura Ingraham, no facts, no policy, no nothing. And so he's just spouting this, oh yeah, oh, he's gonna get this, and oh, he just showed up so benevolent. Here's the other question she didn't ask. Pastor, where were all your members when he came there? Because the audience was nearly all white. This whole, oh, he came to a black church. Wait, he might have come to a black church, but there were no black people there, save for 15, 20 MAGA operatives. Press play.
Democrat pundits say there is no way in hell Donald Trump's going to get up to 21% of the black vote. Not close is what they say. But CNN is pretty shocked at some of the latest data. Check this out.
Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. We're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades. I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless.
Pastor, does that poll, the 21% number, surprise you?
The reason why it doesn't surprise me, because the Democrats, they have taken our vote for granted. The Democrats, they have led our community for 56 years. We have a $2.7 billion budget, but yet no change. You don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to be logical. You just have to see. Ray Charles could see that their policies are failing our communities.
Pastor Sewell, it was an exciting event over the weekend. We really appreciate your joining us. I hope we get to see you soon in Detroit. Thanks so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
All right, so you heard Sewell there talk about, quote, Democratic policies. Sewell, question for you. Who was president from 1981 to 1989? Reagan. Who was president from 1989 to 1993? George H.W. Bush. Then you had 8 years of Bill Clinton, followed by 8 years of George W. Bush, followed by 8 years of Obama, followed by 4 years of Trump. Who was governor of your state prior to the existing governor? Republican Governor Snyder. So it's very interesting how you make statements that Democrats have been in control, but you completely ignore Republican presidents, you ignore Republican governors, you ignore Republican county leaders, you ignore Republican members of Congress, you ignore Republican mayors. We can go on and on and on. See, so this is the problem, that when people make these claims, who's in charge? Well, if you are a city leader, and then when you talk about things that need to change, again, the question goes, who's actually in power? Oh, I'm not simply dismissing any Democrat from criticism. What I'm saying is, when you examine public policy in America, it is a lie to suggest that Democrats have solely been in power for the last 50 years. That is what we call a lie. It was a Republican president who began the war on drugs. It was a Republican president that launched this mass incarceration effort. One of his own former top aides said as much in his own notes and audio recordings. That president was Richard Nixon. But I guess Pastor Sewell forgot that. See, Pastor Sewell, it's easy for you to run to Fox News and happily give an interview. By the way, it was 4 minutes. You want to have a real conversation, Pastor Sewell? Come talk to Black America. There are more people who watch this show who are black than were sitting in your church when Trump came. So if you want to have that conversation, yeah, come here and have that conversation. Come here and let's talk about the policies. Let's actually walk through what Trump did and did not do when he was sitting in the Oval Office. Because he didn't stop by your church when he was president. He didn't stop by Detroit and talk about the issues plaguing the community when he was sitting in the Oval Office, did he? Oh, but now all of a sudden, because he showed you some attention, flashed you a little leg, and now you just happy that he showed up. See, that's what we call weak. We call weak. And if you were so easily impressed by him showing up, well, shame on you. And again, if you are a so-called black preacher and you scared to come talk to black people, but you will gladly run the Fox News where not that many black folks watch at all, well, what does that say about you? And I know for a fact that you've heard from us because you've communicated with my producer. You've emailed. You said you were going to call her on Friday. That didn't happen. I know you've been communicating with others about this as well, and you haven't shown up. And then you say things like, oh, you're deciding to move differently. Really? We can tell. Julianne, your thoughts?
You saw me just laughing because this brother is whack. That's the nicest way I can put it. This is whack. He's pimped his church, which he turned over to white people. As you said, you could look through the audience, see there was a little cadre right up in the front. But other than that, you pan the audience, and there are not that many black people. But that's not really the issue, Roland. The issue is that there's so many black people who are so disturbed. Let me use that word, disturbed, by the current political climate that they're willing to jump out the window, to not save themselves. In other words, all right, Biden ain't perfect. We all know that, and he old, and we know that. Trump old too, but nobody wants to talk about how old he is. Biden sometimes moves slowly. Trump thinks slowly. And whenever he thinks slowly, he throws these slogans out, which are ridiculous. Okay, so having said all that, anybody with good sense will want to keep the orange man out the White House, and the way to do that right now is to deal with Brother Biden. He ain't perfect. No one's perfect. He's doing his thing. This whole thing with this church roller cracks me up. Who is this boy? I say boy, how old, so I get to do that. Who is this young man who turns his church over to a sociopath?
And let me be real clear. I don't have a problem having a conversation at the church, but I do, first of all, disagree with Congo when you allow lies to be told. And Donald Trump lied multiple times. I got a problem when you do not correct those lies in the church. And I have a problem when the pastor prays for Trump and mentions how he was charged, not convicted, but then recites how much money he raised in response to the conviction. That's what you include in the prayer? Okay.
In the prayer, and that's the big part of it, right? That's why I'm so impressed with the other preacher who started, I think, Reverend Dr. Jones or something, who showed it in the first part, because this is what black churches have to do. Black churches have to return to the roots of resistance that got us to where we are right now. With this Reverend Sewell, I mean, it was night and day. The two clips that you showed. The first one was what it meant to actually be speaking at a black church to black people. The second one, this guy, he's the new Republican darling, and he just lies. And he just continues to lie with me. He's going to be booked more, and now he's going to be the new face until they don't need him anymore. And I don't know if he's smart enough to realize that, but that's just what's going to happen. He's going to be the latest pawn until after November, and then he's going to be gone. I wish that some of us in black media or somewhere, would roll up on his church. If he's not going to be responding to requests for interviews, someone's got to roll up on him and put the camera in his face and really expose him for the ignorance that he's espousing. I mean, lying about Obama never went to the hood. Obama went to prisons. Like, what are you talking? At least one prison. I mean, what are you talking about? And everything that Trump said that he was going to do, like you said, Roland, what happened? What was the record when you were there? And then, get up in your church, spewing hell this and all of this other type of stuff. We have to continue to call this out. The black people in Detroit got to continue to call this out. And the fact of the matter is, we have to, all of this thing about churches have to be apolitical and all of that, forget that, because none of these other churches are. You got these guys out here talking about, rapists will go free and condemning immigration and praising Trump. They are all taking political stances. And so the black church has to return to the roots of what it's been, get out of all of this stuff about the, prosperity gospel and all this other type of stuff, and get in the fight for our lives. We need more pastors like that first clip, and need to call out pastors who are fakes and frauds and phonies like Reverend Sewell. That's exactly what he is.
Niambi?
Well, look, something my grandfather used to say is the devil can quote scripture too. And this made me think about that, because when you have someone like a Trump coming to your church, and not all political candidates, but this political candidate in particular, what you're suggesting is that you endorse this person, not just them in terms of their politics, but also their personal acts. I mean, you have a man who is a convicted felon appearing in your pulpit to say lies, who, you don't even really hold to a standard. Just the fact that he is there is the gift. The fact that he is there shows that he cares about black people. When this is a man who called for the execution of black teenagers who were later found to be not guilty, and he sort of not acknowledged that, right? I mean, this is the same man who said there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville when Heather Heyer was killed by white supremacist nationalists that he brought in from the cold and made them feel like legitimate partners, and even saw some of those people get elected, right, on his coattails. So I don't give much weight here. I think what this person is, I don't know how much he gives to his parishioners, but I do know that there's a lot of money to be made on the back end if you're willing to say what people want you to say. And it's not to suggest that you have to agree with Democrats. I think, Reverend Barber has been a really good example of how you can hold everyone to account regardless of their political stance. But there have to be some really bright lines in the sand, and there have to be boundaries. White supremacy needs to be a boundary for all of us, not just people who support Republicans or people who support Democrats, but for humanity, right? That should be a problem. A person who has cheated on his wives multiple times and all of these other things that we know he has done. He tells lies all the time. The man has even said he doesn't believe in forgiveness because he doesn't do anything that requires forgiveness. So I just don't know how you can countenance this as a member and a leader, of this church community and call that responsible stewardship. I would have real questions about this pastor if I was a member of that church after this meeting.
Well, again, if Pastor Sewell wants to have an actual conversation with black people, he welcome to come on this show anytime. Or we can have that conversation. But I say stop running. See, you run the Fox News. You run the MSNBC. That's mainstream white media. Have a conversation with black people. And we can talk about policy all day, every day. It's not on you, Pastor Sewell. What you gonna do? I'll be right back.
Now streaming on the Black Star Network.
It was my junior year at Georgetown, and Spike calls me and he says, Malcolm, what are you doing next year? So, graduating, He said, take a year off, work on Malcolm X. I said, okay. But first of all, for the folks who don't know, Spike is my cousin. Spike is my cousin. Just for the person watching, like, how the hell is Spike just gonna tell you that it's true? It's true.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Dr. Gerald Horne, a man regarded by many as the most important historian of our time. He provides us a history lesson I'm betting you've never heard before.
Texas enslavers who planned to continue the conflict even after Appomattox, even after the formal surrender of Robert E. Lee.
Dr. Horne talks about his new book, The Counter-Revolution of 1836, Texas, Slavery, and Jim Crow, and the Roots of U.S. Fascism. You do not want to miss this conversation. Only on the Black Table right here on the Black Star Network.
What's good, y'all? This is Doug E. Fresh, and you're watching my brother Roland Martin Unfiltered as we go a little something like this. Hit it. It's real.
See, this is when you know you're dealing with a fake person when it comes to Christianity. Now, Pastor Sewell sat there and talked about, how Trump, he came here and he prayed for him, and Trump talked about how great of a pastor he was. Why did Pastor Sewell ask him to expound on this? This was a question Republican pollster Frank Luntz asked Trump in 2015. And if you want to see a narcissist who straight up lies about being a Christian, watch this.
You used the word Christian. Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I don't think in terms of, I'm a religious person. Shockingly, because people are so shocked when they find this out, I'm Protestant, I'm Presbyterian. And I go to church, and I love God, and I love my church. And Norman Vincent Peale, the great Norman Vincent Peale, was my pastor. The Power of Positive Thinking. Everybody's heard of Norman. He would give a sermon you never wanted to leave. Sometimes we have sermons, and every once in a while we think about leaving a little early, right, even though we're Christian. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Frank, would give a sermon. I'm telling you, I still remember his sermons. It was unbelievable. And what he would do is he'd bring real-life situations, modern-day...
Stop. I still remember his sermons. Y'all, that fool can't name one sermon. He can't give you no title. He can't give you no context. Y'all know he lying. He's straight lying. Y'all want to hear more stupidity? Listen to this.
His sermons. It was unbelievable. And what he would do is he'd bring real-life situations, modern-day situations, into the sermon. And you could listen to him all day long. When you left the church, you were disappointed that it was over. He was the greatest guy. And then, he passed away, but he was a great... He wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, which is a great book. But have you ever asked God for forgiveness? I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I think if...
Oh my God, I just try to do a better job from there. The man is a liar. Lightning should have struck his ass at that very moment. I got to play the rest of this stupidity, y'all.
I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so. I think if I do something wrong, I think I just try and make it right. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't. Now, when I take...
Please, hold on. I don't bring God into that picture. Oh, I'm a Christian. I'm a Pentecost. What do you say? Presbyterian. I don't bring God. Y'all see why that fool held the Bible upside down? Press play.
I just try and make it right. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't. Now, when I take, when we go in church and when I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker, I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness.
Stop. Oh my God. Stop. Did that fool just say, having the Last Supper, which he describes as my little cracker and my little wine. Mm-hmm. And then, y'all, he did the sign of the cross. Do y'all know any non-Catholics who do the sign of the cross? I don't know no non-Catholics who do the sign. Y'all press play, press play.
Which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker. I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness, and I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed.
Freeze right there. Oh my God. Okay, all right. I do that as often as possible because I feel cleansed. Anybody who goes to church knows how many times this fool thinks they hand out wine and crackers at least 3 times a week. Oh, I do it as much as I can because I feel cleansed. Play the rest.
To me, that's important. Right. I do that. But in terms of officially, I could say absolutely, and everybody. I don't think in terms of that. I think in terms of let's go on and let's make it right.
He has no idea what the hell Frank Luntz was asking him. Right. No idea. But you got to remember, this the same fool who was asked this question and listen to this answer.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what 1 or 2 of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal. So I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into.
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible, the whole Bible is an incredible, I joke very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But I just think the Bible is just something very special.
Boy, come. That's what Pastor Sewell should have been talking about. He should have been saying, Donald, why are you a fraudulent Christian? Niambi, go ahead.
I mean, I think, look, Donald Trump knows that he has to mention Christianity, but it is very clear that it is uncomfortable for him, that this is not a genuine part of his life. I mean, it's never been part of his MO. And if you listen to if you see what he's done, right, you don't just have to listen to what he says. You've seen what he's done. He doesn't behave like any Christian I've ever seen. So I think we need to dispense with this sort of charade that Donald Trump cares about Christianity or the church. He cares about power. Christians are a means to an end for him. So he has to profess some kind of familiarity in order to get those people aboard. But it is very clear this man hasn't seen church and church seen him. And, you know, every Sunday, I guess, is Communion Sunday for Donald Trump and in his mind. But, I mean, this man is a liar, and he even lies about the most basic parts of him,
and
which is his spirituality.
And that's why these conservative, right-wing, so-called Christian evangelicals are flat out stuck on stupid, supporting this man, Makongo.
And I think they're supporting him at the end of the day because they simply see him as a tool and a vehicle to get the power that they want, to get the racist power that they want, to get the power over women that they want. I mean, I'm trying to imagine, like, what would happen if there was someone out there pretending to be Muslim like this, you know, or pretending to be Jewish or pretending to be something like, how much they would call him out and condemn this man for being a liar and a fraud and a phony. But so many so-called, you know, Christian evangelicals, white ones, and the Reverend Sewells of the world are embracing him simply because they look at him as a tool to bring America back to some ancient biblical times in terms of the power that they want to have. And that's why they're going to go along for the ride. And it's really tragic. It's really shameful. But I feel like this is a time right now, we're kind of going off on the last segment, all Christians need to stand up. Take your Christianity back. Forget about Make America Great Again. Take your Christianity back from this liar and charlatan.
Well, and that's why what you have is you have these fraudulent individuals, Julian, and the folks at the Lincoln Project, they put this ad together, which actually I think pretty much says it all.
Proud to be promoting the God Bless the USA Bible. That's my favorite book.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody.
Donald Trump found guilty all 34 counts of falsifying business records.
Donald Trump's hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels.
She had an affair with Trump.
I am the chosen one.
The Trump Organization frauded the state of New York.
$354 million.
I'm very greedy.
We must make America pray again.
How stupid are the people of the country to believe this crap?
Don't get conned.
Right on to the Lincoln Project. It's a great ad. It really summarizes everything that Crooked Man is about. But this is more than this, guys. We know that this man is not only a liar, he's a certified public liar. And it's gone on and on and on. I'm concerned about the mental health of the people who support him, even though they know how mucked up his stuff is. I'm concerned about the people who, no matter what the fact pattern is, embrace him. I'm really concerned about those people. Something wrong with them. And I'm concerned that we, Roland, you do, of course, an amazing job, and we always have a great panel to talk about these things. But the fact is that we can talk all we want. There's a hardcore set of Republicans who don't care. Like, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. He could have 34 felony convictions on his taxes. I mean, he could do all this, and they're okay with it. And that's my concern.
Yeah.
I don't know how we turn them around.
Well, no, first of all, here's the deal. Here's one thing. We don't turn them around. We expose the lies. That's what we do. We expose them. And we also mock the fools who believe this fool is a Christian. I came across this video, and I just, there are a couple of clips in here that I had not, one I had not seen, but here's another 3 minutes of just laughter, and then we'll close this out. Watch this.
The Bible. You talked about The Art of the Deal, great book. The Bible, even better. Why is that for you?
Well, there's so many things, like, you take whatever you want to say. There's so many things that you can learn from it. Proverbs, the chapter, never bend to envy. I've had that thing all of my life where people are bending to envy. And they're just, it's an incredible book. So many things you can learn from the Bible, and you can lead your life. And I'm not just talking in terms of religion. I'm talking in terms of leading a life, even beyond a religion. There's so many brilliant things in the Bible, and
I'm wondering what one or two of your most favorite Bible verses are, and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it, because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Favorite authors?
Well, I have a number of favorite authors. I think Tom Wolfe is excellent.
Did you read Vanity of the Bonfires?
I did not.
It's a phenomenal book.
What book are you reading now?
Yeah.
Well, I'm reading
Bonfire of the Vanities.
I'm reading my own book again because I think it's so fantastic, Tom.
Is there a favorite Bible verse or Bible story that has informed your thinking or your character through life, sir?
Well, I think many. I mean, when we get into the Bible, I think many, so many. And people talk an eye for an eye. You can almost say that. That's not a particularly nice thing. But, if you look at what's happening to our country, I mean, when you see what's going on with our country, how people are taking advantage of us and how they scoff at us and laugh at us and they laugh at our face. And
what's the best book you've read beside Art of the Deal?
I really like Tom Wolfe's last book, and I think he's a great author. He's done a beautiful job.
Which book?
His current book. His current book. It's just out.
Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yes, and the man has done a very, very good job. And I really can't hear with this earphone, by the way.
And I asked some of the folks, because I hear this is a major theme right here, but 2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17, that's the whole ball game. Where the Spirit of the Lord, right? Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And here there is Liberty College, but Liberty University. But it is so true. When you think, and that's really
Is that the one? Is that the one you like? I think that's the one.
Even to cite a verse.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
The Bible.
Is that the one you like? He told his people, go to the Bible, go to the back and look up liberty and just find me something that mentions liberty. This is a plumb idiot.
You are?
And what I need people to understand, Omakongo, is that any of these white right-wing pastors, the crazy antics of Paula White and all of them, they are all frauds. They are Ed Young in Houston, fraud. The dude in Gateway out of Texas, who inappropriate relationship with a young lady. No, the girl was 12 years old. Oh, hardcore right winger. Franklin Graham, all of it. These are the people who question the Christianity of Obama, but they cover for this satanic individual.
Yeah, I remember a couple of weeks ago, you played this other pastor, white pastor, who was calling out all of these guys for celebrating Trump. He didn't use Trump's name, but he was like, this is not, the American gospel. This is, the Lord's gospel. It's bigger than nations. And all of these frauds need to be called out. They never lose their tax-exempt status, right? And they see this as a hustle as well. And so we need people in the pews to speak out. We need people who are in the communities to speak out, because nobody should feel comfortable with seeing their religion be twisted and utilized in this particular way. And they have made Christianity as central to this campaign as they have abortion, as they've had voting rights and everything else. It should not be as big an issue as it is, but these are people who have nothing else to grasp on. So they're going to grasp onto lies, and they're going to grasp on a purity test, even though they have somebody who violates every commandment that is there. He's a hypocrite. They're hypocrites. Once again, when will the real Christians stand up and take Christianity back from them?
And this is also why, Niambi, we cannot allow these people to dare to preach morality and the word to any of us by following this piece of crap.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we have to be more discerning. Everyone who has a Bible, has a church, or even a following doesn't make them right, doesn't make them a good person. This is where our common sense has to come into play, right? I mean, my mom used to say, you could get a Bible and you can lead people anywhere. In some places, they're leading you are to ruin, because if you can countenance a person who will lie, again, about anything, things that are easily figure outable, things that are Googleable, right? Like, a person that will lie like that is very scary. A person who has no kind of regard for basic things like the truth or integrity, who doesn't care about their own sort of ethical responsibilities as a human, forget being the president, has no business serving in any higher capacity, much less in a capacity where he could do a lot of harm to a lot of people. We've seen what he's done already. So never mind those little stimulus checks. Never mind these pastors who are lining up to kiss the ring because they know that there is some gold at the end of that rainbow. Mm-hmm. This man is dangerous, and we have to be very clear about who we're dealing with, and the people that are willing to vouch for this man, to put their personal reputations on the line of this man. You should consider them to just be proxies of this man, and they too are a problem.
Indeed, indeed. Omakongo, Niambi, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Folks, and don't forget the pastor, Lauren Livingston, who I'm going to close out the show with this, who had this to say about Trump selling that despicable, him literally selling the Bible. But this commentary about this pastor, about this white preacher, on point.
Some of you bring politics into the church. You think that politics is spiritual stuff. Politics is of this world. You think it's your duty to be political about this, that, and the other. No, your duty is to serve the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, body, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Don't be talking to me about my spiritual responsibility to vote. I don't have a spiritual responsibility to vote. I have a civic privilege. Don't be telling me that voting is spiritual. See, that's what happens when you don't read and pray. When you don't read and pray, you say, wow, there's a Bible out now that includes the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Isn't that wonderful? No. No, it's disgusting. It's blasphemous. It's a ploy. Are you kidding me? Some of you are so encouraged by that. Let me tell you something. The gospel is not an American gospel. It is the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. But Pastor, I bought the Bible. Really? You're telling me that you're encouraged because someone took a government, U.S. Constitution, a document that says we are of the people, by the people, and for the people, the people, the people, the people. And you have put it right beside the Word of God, which is eternal, unchanging, which says, of him, by him, through him, to him, from him are all things, and you're going to put those together and be happy about it? God forbid. Now, you can get mad if you want to, but I'm going to tell you something. If you glory in that kind of thing, you don't have a prayer life. If you glory in that kind of mess, political mess, you do not know what the Word of God says. I'm going to rear back and tell you something. This is not my home. This world is not my home. I've been sent out just like the 70 were sent out. You've been put here and sent out just like the 70 were sent out. We've been put here as strangers and pilgrims, and we are passing through. I am just walking through. I'm just renting an apartment for a little while in this strange and foreign land. No, sir.
Again, don't allow these charlatans to play the games and think that they can tell us about Scripture, tell us about the Bible, when they are supporting a despicable individual, an insurrectionist, a narcissist, a liar, a thief, all of that. That's who Donald Trump is. And we're going to keep saying that until Election Day. Folks, that's it for us. Don't forget, support us in what we do. Join the Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. YouTube, folks, what are y'all doing? Y'all got 100, we're 100 away from 1,000 likes. Hurry up. Hit the doggone like button. Y'all commenting left and right, but you're not hitting the like button. Cash App, $ RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, RolandSMartin.com, RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available bookstores nationwide. You can get it at Ben Bella Books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, Bookshop, Chapters, Books A Million, Target. You can get the audio version on Audible. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered, on the Black Star Network. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?